in this tutorial, we'll be creating a Flappy Bird game. You can see when I click up, it goes up. You go through the pipes, like so. On the right side of the screen, you can see the frame object that we're using to render all of the HTML components. And with that being said, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install our svelte template with the npx digest command. So we'll do that. And then if I open this up, you can see there's a script folder and it says set up typescript. So we're going to run that because we want a TypeScript project. So I'm going to say node scripts and the setup one right there, and that converted it. Now I can do npm install to install the dependencies. And after that's done, I'll clear the screen and I'll do npm run dev just to make sure that everything's up and working. Okay, so now we can go to localhost 5000 and we should see our TypeScript project set up. So now we're going to clean some stuff up. We don't want anything in here. So we'll delete everything inside of our app component except for the script tag because we'll use that later. We'll also delete our thing right here. And we'll go into our global CSS and we'll delete all that. And that should clean up our project, except for we need to go into our index.html. Almost forgot about that. We need to make all these links relative because that will make it work with GitHub Pages. And we'll also rename the title to flappybird just so that we have a nicer title right up here. Okay, so now that we have that done, we're going to create our game logic in a TypeScript folder called game.ts. And we're going to start by importing an interface in, or copying and pasting an interface. And this is our frame interface, and we'll add to this as we go into the project. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our game controller class, and this will contain all of our game logic. That way we don't have to put any game logic into the components. And then once we have that, we will create some private variables for our game controller class. This one stores the frame, and then this one stores the velocity. And then we'll create a constructor. And with TypeScript, they have these handy, you can just put private or public. So we'll create a public read-only variable. So it's basically like a public constant variable that can't be changed. And we'll create a height of 800, and we'll do another one, another read-only for the width, and we're going to make that 400. So we're going to create an 800 by 400 game space. So once we have that done, we can then we'll create a function called new game, and that will create a frame using what we already created. And this will be enough information to start rendering the game. So now that we have that, we can start creating our game component, and this will contain all the components needed to render the game and also render the background of the game. So let's create that. So I'm going to copy and paste this code in, and right there. And then let's go ahead and see it. So we'll see it by importing it into our game component. So we're going to import game from game.svelte, and we'll go ahead and just display it like so. So hopefully we'll see. Okay, so this is a common error, or this is something I've seen a lot. When you see this debug failure, just go ahead and do Control-C and just run npm run dev, and then it should go away. Okay, so now that's looking good. So now we can see our blue screen. The reason it's blue is right here, this background color. And you can see it's using the width and the height of the frame, which it created up here to render it. So it's 800 tall and 400 wide. And if I wanted to look at the frame, I could just do, I could just look at it like so. So I could just say JSON stringify frame, and we'll just pre-print it. So we'll put it in between a pre, just so that we can see it. And you can see this is what the frame looks like. So 800 by 400, and you can see how it's rendering to the thing. Okay, so we got that, and we got our frame looking good. The next thing we need to do is create some interfaces for our pipes. So I'm going to go back to our game.ts file, and we're going to create a pipe interface and a pipe peer interface. So I'm going to paste this above here. And they all share the same left. That's why the pipe here has the same left, but they all have a top and a height, which will be different. And we have a bottom pipe and a top pipe, and show just means whether it's visible or not. Okay, so now that we have that, we need to add some properties to our game controller. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to make this a little bit more readable by hitting enter, and then we'll do a comma, and we'll paste these in. So this is our pipe width, so that's how wide the pipe's going to be. This is the gap between the two pipes, and min is the minimum height that the pipe will be, and max is the maximum height the pipe will be. So it'll be between 70 to 350. So now that we have that, we can we also need to add something to our frame component as well. So in order to render this to the frame, we need to add 2 pipes to the frame, the first pipe and the second pipe, and we should be getting an error right here saying that we need the first pipe and second pipe. So that's going good. So let's go ahead and create some stuff that we're going to need for that. The first thing we're going to need to do is create a random random Y value between 70 and 350 for our pipes, so they wind up in different places. So that's what this does. And then we're going to need to create another private function that will create pipes, or create pipe pairs, and that'll use that random function. Show is basically used to determine whether it should show the pipe, and you can see it just uses that for the random Y and X. Next, we'll create our pipes in our new game function, and we only want one pipe to be visible at first. We want the other one not to be visible. That's why we have the true and false. And let's see. And yeah, we just need to add that to our frame, because that'll fix the error. And with that, we should be good. Next, we'll let me just make sure. Yeah, this is actually a mistake. This needs to be minus the width, because we want it to show here. So if we did plus the width, it would be out here, because it would be width plus the width of the pipe, but we want it to be minus the width so that you can see it. So that's a mistake on my part. Glad we caught that. So the next thing we need to do is create the pipe component so we can render the pipe and see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and save it, and let's render it. So we're going to create a pipe.svelte file, and we're going to paste that in. And you can see it's just using, it's taking in a pipe as a prop, and it's just using that to render the pipe out onto the screen. So now that we have that, we can just go into our game component. Oops, right here. So let's go into our game component, and let's go in between these mains and paste these in, and we'll also need to import them. So if I go import pipe from pipe.svelte, they should be imported, and you can see the pipe. Now if I refresh this page, you can see it randomly goes in different places, which is what we want. Sometimes it's not super random, or it doesn't move as much, but it's pretty random. Okay, so now that we have that working, we need to start moving the pipe. So we're going to create another private function called move pipe, and this will move individual pipes in our frame. So let's go to our game.ts file again, and we're going to create another private function called move pipe. And in order to do this, we're also going to need to add some properties to our constructor. So let's do that too, and I'll go over what these do once we add them. So we'll go up to our constructor, and we'll add them. So generate new pipe is the percentage that we need to be to generate a new pipe, and the speed is just what it sounds like. It's how fast it's moving per frame. The pipe is moving per frame. So you can see right here we're just minusing 1 from the speed, because we're going to use the left to determine if it's like 30% to the left. That means it's gone 70% of the way there, because we're defaulting it to 0.7. So if it's gone 70% of the way there, we want to show the other pipe, or we want to show the other pipe basically, or we want to start that other pipe moving. So that's what this is basically doing. So now that we have that working, or now that we have that going, we need to create another function called next frame. This is going to be a public function, and this will be called every 90 times a second. So our frame rate will be 90 times a second, And this will allow us to move the pipe. So this will move the first pipe and the second pipe and return a frame. So now that we have that, we can go to our game.svelte file and we can start calling new frames. So the way you do that is you just write a set interval and you just say frame equals game.next frame. And then we want that to happen every 90 seconds. So this takes in the number of milliseconds. So I just said 1,000 divided by 90. And if all that works, we should see new pipes, and they're coming in at random places. So that's looking really good. We have our pipes up and running. The next thing we need to do is add the ground height. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to comment this out so it's not distracting us, and I'm going to add the ground pipe. So first we'll add a property to our constructor called ground height. I meant the ground, you know what I meant. So let's add the ground height. Next we'll add an interface. This might be overkill, but doesn't really matter. Called ground height. And then we'll add it right here. So we'll say ground equals ground. Yeah, equals that. And we'll get an error because we don't have ground height. So to fix that, we just say ground and then height equals this dot ground height. So now we have that. Because this is a static component and not much is going on with it, we can just render it out in our game component, which is pretty easy to do. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing we'll do is we'll create a ground and a style for a ground. So we'll just wrap it in a section, and we want it to be on the bottom, which is why we're positioning it bottom absolute. And then we'll just use this section, and we should see a ground pipe right there, and we do. So that's looking good. We've got our ground going. So the next thing we need to do is add our bird. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go back to our game, and just to remind you, the reason this is not moving is that I have this commented out. I'll recomment that back in soon though. So we're going to create a bird interface for our bird, and this will contain the top, the left position, and the size, because our bird's going to be a square, so we just need one size. And then we need a whole bunch of properties added to our constructor for our bird. So let's go ahead and do that. See, we have our size of our bird, 20. The X position is going to be at 40. The gravity, which I got from Tech with Tim video, is 1.5. The jump velocity is 10, and then I'm going to slow it down if it's greater than 0 by 0.3. Okay, so now that we have that, we need to add our bird to our frame interface so that we can render it out to the screen. So we'll get another error because we haven't added our bird yet, but that's no big deal because we're about to add it. So we're just going to add our bird. So we'll just, for right now, they won't be able to click on the bird, but we'll be able to have enough to render a bird component to the screen. So you can see for top, we're just putting it in the middle, and we're just putting it in the bird X, and that should be enough to render out the bird component. So the next thing we're going to do is create bird.svelte to render out our bird, and I'm going to copy and paste this in. Oops. Right here, and we can't see it because we haven't used it in our game component. So let's go ahead and import it in. So I'm going to import bird from bird.svelte, and then to use it, we'll just say bird, and we just need to pass in the prop, the frame.bird, because if you see, like, our bird takes in that information and renders it to the screen. So if I see this, I should now see a bird once everything refreshes, and I do. So that's looking really good. So now we have our bird component, our ground up and running. We want the bird to be able to jump, and we also want the bird to be able to fall as well. So we'll add some functionality for that. So let's add the jump first. So I'm going to create a public function called jump because we'll need to access this. So if the velocity is less than 0, we'll allow the player to jump. And then we'll create a function for jump. which is right in our game component, because we're gonna be listening for it right there. And then we're gonna need a special svelte component for jumping called window svelte, window:svelte, and this will listen for clicks on the window. So basically, anytime somebody clicks. Now that we have that going, we'll need to update our next frame function to use gravity and to do the jump. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here. And yeah, so this will slow down the velocity, and it's minus because as you go further down on the computer, the Y numbers go up. So the gravity is plus, and that's minus. And then I'll delete this extra return. And we can't see it because we're not calling next game, but let's go ahead and test this out. So now if I click up, you can see I go up. There's no collision detection, so I'm not dying, but it is working. So that's pretty awesome. The next thing we need to do is comment out this frame so we don't get distracted and do the next part, which is we're going to create a start function and and we're also going to stop generating new frames if the game has not started or if the game is over. So let's do that first. So in our next frame function, we'll add that. So that'll prevent the game from going. And we'll also create a start game function so that they can click on something and then start the game. So if I go to my game.ts file where I was, I click on start game, I paste this in, this will create a new game frame and start the game. So now what I can do is add some of that functionality. So first thing I'm going to do is create a start game function that'll just set the frame to the return of start game. So let's go to our game.svelte file and create that function. Next, what we'll do is we'll add some CSS because we're going to want to add a button basically to allow the user to start the game. So I'm going to click here and add the CSS for the button. And then I'm going to say if the game is over or the game has started or the game has not started, then display this button basically that we copied in. So now we can see we have a start game button. If I click start game, it's not working because I have frame commented out, but now when I click start game, it should start. Okay, so that's working good. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is check and see if the bird has hit the ground. So we're going to add this if statement. And this will check and see if the bird has hit the ground. I'm going to save. I'm going to click start. And let's make sure it works, and it does. So you can see if the bird's top, which is this part right here, is less than the ground height minus the bird size. So meaning we're going to subtract the bird size and the ground height. So if it's like right here, we're going to say the game's over. So that's good. The next thing we need to do is check and see if it's in between the pipes. So we're going to have a check pipe function that will take in the left position of the pipe. So this is going to be a private function, so I'll put it right here. So if the left of the bird is, or the left of the pipe, I think, is less than the bird X minus the bird size. So if it's like right here or it's right here, we're going to check the pipe. And then if it is in the range, then we're going to make sure we're going to return true if it's like not in this range, basically in between the pipes. So that's what this has collided with pipe function does. And then the only thing left to do is to basically write an if statement in our next frame calling that function to make sure that the bird has collided with the pipe. So that's this right here. I'm going to move this one over here so we can just keep our gravity in the same spot. So let's test that out. I'm going to click start game, and I'm going to go through the pipe because we need to make sure that works. and I'm going to hit the pipe, and it looks like that's working, so that's good. So the next thing we need to do is our score. So we're going to do that past the gravity, so we'll do that right here. I'll make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. And what we're going to do is we're going to check if the left pipe or the first pipe has gone past the bird, and if it has, we're going to add 1 to the score. So let's do that. So that's that right there. So you can see, see that calculation. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section. So now that we have that, we can render that out to the screen. So I'm going to go to my game view or my game component. I'm going to add some CSS for my score, which is right here. And then I'm going to add a score section. So I'm going to copy in this section with an ID of score, and we'll put that right there. And you can see what that does. So yeah, so it's absolutely positioned right there. You can see the padding and the font style, which is cursive. So let's test this out. Hopefully I can get 1. We'll test out again. 2. Okay, so that's what I got, was 2. So that's good. So one thing I want to do is display the score under the button. So I'm going to do that. And we'll do that by writing an if in our template. So if the game is over, we want to display the score that the user got. So we'll put that inside of our button, above our button, because I think that looks a little better. So we'll do that right here, like so. And there you go. So let's see. We'll test it out. Okay, so you can see I got a score of 1. Trying to get a higher score, but with that, you have built a Flappy Bird game. Thank you so much for watching this video end to end. I really appreciate it. I have a really exciting guest coming up for the Svelte Meetup. He's the creator of Plenti, a static site generator. So we're really happy to have him. But if you want to give a talk at the meetup, please let me know. I'll have a link in the description along with my email address, and we'd love to have you. So you don't have to create a static site generator. That's a pretty big task, but your demo projects or any projects are welcome. And if you have any feedback about videos, if you like this video, let me know. If you have feedback about the style, let me know. And I hope you all have a great day, and I will catch you later.